My name is Irene, and at 25, I finally achieved something I had dreamed about for years. I bought my first home. Every late night, every extra shift, every small sacrifice I made was for that goal. I had worked tirelessly, saving every penny until I could finally afford the down payment. It was supposed to be my fresh start, a symbol of independence and everything I'd built on my own. But then, my parents stepped in. They told me that for legal reasons, I should put the property under their names. "It'll protect you from liability," my father had said with that confident tone that made it sound like he knew best. My mother nodded along, assuring me it was just a formality, that nothing would actually change. It would still be my house. I wanted to believe them. After all, they were my parents. Why would they lie? A year later, I found out exactly why. They gave the house away. To my brother. As a wedding gift. I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I didn't even ask why. I just walked away. 6 months passed in silence before my phone started ringing nonstop. Calls from my mom, my dad, even Daniel. I ignored them all. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to be your biggest supporters, you'll understand what that silence between us meant. It wasn't peace, it was grief. The kind that sits deep in your bones. So when my mom texted me out of the blue one afternoon, asking me to come home for dinner, I hesitated. "We haven't seen you in a while," she wrote. "Let's have dinner together." For a moment I almost said no. It had been a long week. Endless meetings, paperwork, and exhaustion. But then I thought about how I used to always say yes to family, no matter how much it cost me. Some mix of habit, guilt, and that tiny leftover piece of hope made me agree. I should have trusted my instincts. Because from the second I stepped through that front door, I knew something was off. There were balloons floating in the living room, and a big white banner strung across the wall that read, "Congratulations, Daniel and Sophia." The dining table was set like it was someone's birthday. My brother and his fiancée were sitting there, glowing with excitement, their hands clasped together as they laughed with my parents. I froze, my hand still clutching the strap of my purse. "What's all this?" I asked cautiously. My mom turned around, her face lighting up with a forced kind of cheer. "Irene, perfect timing," she said, as if this were all completely normal. I looked around, confused. My dad stood and clapped Daniel on the shoulder, beaming like he'd just announced something wonderful. "We have big news," he said proudly. Daniel looked up at me, that smug grin spreading across his face, the one he used to wear whenever he thought he'd beaten me at something. And in that instant, I knew whatever was coming, I wasn't going to like it. Then my dad said it. "We're giving them the house." I blinked. Sure, I'd misheard. "You're what?" My mom chuckled lightly, like this was just a small misunderstanding. "Sweetheart, it just makes sense. Daniel and Sophia are getting married. They'll need a home of their own." My mind went blank. I stared at them, waiting for someone to tell me it was a joke. But no one did. Daniel's grin only widened as he squeezed Sophia's hand. "Crazy, right? We thought we'd have to rent for a while, but now we can start our marriage with something stable." Stable. That word hit me like a punch. I had spent years building that stability, years of hard work, 2 jobs, skipped dinners, and sleepless nights. That house was supposed to be my reward, and now they were handing it off like some kind of favor. I swallowed hard, my voice tight. "That's my house." My dad let out a sigh, the kind that said I was being difficult again. "Irene, you know that's not technically true. The title is under our name. We explained that to you before." I stared at him in disbelief. "You said it was for legal reasons." He shrugged. "Well, it's still our house on paper," I wanted to scream, to tell them how cruel this was. But all that came out was a whisper. "I paid for it." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Come on, Irene, don't be selfish." My head snapped toward him. "Selfish?" He was taking the home I bought, and he was the selfish one. Sophia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and gave me a soft, pitying smile. "You're so independent, Irene. You'll be fine. You always land on your feet." That's what they all said, that I was strong, capable, that I'd figure it out. It was just another excuse to keep taking from me. Meanwhile, Daniel had always been the one who needed more. More support, more forgiveness, more of everything. I looked at my parents one last time. "You really think this is fair?" My mom's smile faltered for a moment, then returned, calm and calculated. "It's what's best for the family," she said softly. "Not our family." Something in me cracked, but I refused to let them see it. I could have yelled, demanded they return what they took, but I knew it was pointless. The house wasn't in my name. Legally, they could do whatever they wanted, and emotionally, they already had. So I nodded once, my jaw tight. "Okay." Then I turned around, walked out the door, and never looked back. I didn't pack. I didn't grab a single thing from my room. I just left. Because if I stayed another second, I would have fallen apart. Let them have it, I thought. Let them live with their choices. One day, I knew they would regret it. That night, I drove aimlessly for hours before finding a small one-bedroom apartment across town. It was tiny, barely furnished, but it was mine. I used the last of my savings for the deposit and first month's rent. It wasn't much, but it was a start. From then on, I threw myself into work. I picked up extra shifts, volunteered for every project, and focused on one thing only: rebuilding. Within 3 months, I got a promotion, a raise big enough to change everything. For the first time, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. Every dollar I earned went to me, not them. I was thriving. Meanwhile, they stayed silent. No calls, no texts, not even a birthday message. It was as if I'd been erased from their lives entirely, until little hints started slipping. Through the cracks, a coworker casually mentioned. Seeing my mom at the grocery store, said she looked off. Distant cousin messaged me on Facebook asking, "Hey, is everything okay with your parents? Your dad seemed really stressed last time I saw him." At first, I brushed it off. They had everything they wanted. Daniel had the house, Sophia had her dream life, and my parents had their perfect image of a happy family. Why should I care? Then one night, while scrolling through social media, I noticed something strange. Daniel and Sophia had gone quiet. Their posts used to flood my feed. New furniture, dinner parties, sunsets from my porch. But now, nothing. The last picture was over a month old. Then I saw it, a new post. A selfie of Daniel and Sophia at a restaurant, smiles tight, eyes tired. The caption read, "Crazy how fast things change." No context. No details, just that. The comments were worse, vague messages from friends. "Hope everything's okay, man. Stay strong, bro. You'll get through this." Get through what? I felt a strange twist in my stomach. Something was happening, but I wasn't going to be the one to ask. They had cut me off. They could deal with their mess on their own. Then, a week later, my mom called. I stared at the screen as her name flashed again and again. I let it ring. Then Dad tried. Then Daniel. I ignored them all, until I got a text from my brother that made my chest tighten. "Daniel, I know you're mad, but we need to talk. It's important." I typed back one word. "Me. Why?" It took a few minutes, but then came the reply. "Daniel, just come home, please. Home." The word made me laugh bitterly. As if I had one, I didn't answer. But for the first time in months, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. After 3 more days of endless calls and messages, I finally gave in to curiosity. I needed to see it for myself. When I pulled into the driveway, my breath caught. The lawn was overgrown, weeds sprouting through cracks in the pavement. The curtains were drawn tight, the house dark and lifeless, and taped to the front door was a bright orange notice, "Foreclosure." Before I could even process it, the door opened, and my mother stumbled out. "Irene!" she cried, rushing toward me. She looked different. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes. She looked nothing like the woman who once smiled so proudly as she handed my house to my brother. And in that moment, I realized their perfect world had finally fallen apart. She grabbed my arm like she thought I was about to run. "Sweetheart, we were just about to Callaghan. Thank God you're here." I pulled away. "What's going on?" She hesitated. But before she could answer, my dad stepped outside too, rubbing his forehead like he had the worst headache of his life. "We need your help," he muttered. I crossed my arms. "With what?" My mom glanced at my dad, then at Daniel, who had just appeared in the doorway behind them. Arms crossed, looking annoyed, like this was inconvenient for him, like I was the problem. I narrowed my eyes. "Someone explain." My mom sighed, wringing her hands together. "It's the mortgage, Irene." I stared at her. "The bank is threatening foreclosure," she said quietly. "We're behind on payments." I let the words sink in slowly, carefully. Then I let out a hollow laugh. "I never missed a payment," I said. My dad looked away. I turned to Daniel. "How far behind are you?" His jaw tightened. "It's not my fault." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because last time I checked, you were the one living here." He clenched his fists. "We just fell behind a little. The bank is overreacting." I folded my arms. "How far behind, Daniel?" A long silence. Then my mother cleared her throat. 5 months. I felt my stomach drop. 5 months. That wasn't falling behind a little. That was one step away from losing the house completely. I exhaled slowly, piecing everything together. Daniel had gambled away the mortgage payments. I had known about his habit for years. It started small, sports betting here and there, a poker game with friends. But then it got bigger, riskier. I had always assumed our parents covered for him. But now, with a house in his name, he had burned through everything. And now they were scrambling. "You need to help us," my mom said, her voice urgent. I tilted my head. "And why would I do that?" She blinked. "Irene, this is your home too." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's funny because 6 months ago you told me I could find another place." My dad sighed like I was being difficult. "Look, we made a mistake. But the bank is ready to take the house and we just need you." "Just need me?" I cued in. Silence. None of them argued because we all knew it was true. I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the child they had spent their lives making excuses for, but I was the responsible one, the one who always fixed things. And they thought, just like every other time, I'd swoop in and clean up their mess. I glanced back at the foreclosure notice on the door. If I walked away now, the bank would take the house within weeks. But this house was supposed to be mine. And maybe I could make that true again. I looked at Daniel. "How much do you owe?" His shoulders sagged in relief. "We need a little over 18,000. I nodded, thinking, that was a lot. But with my promotion, my savings, and a structured plan, I could cover it. But not for them, not for free. I crossed my arms. "I'll pay it." My mom gasped, clapping her hands together. "Oh, sweetheart, we knew we could count on you." "But I have conditions," I interrupted. My dad frowned. "Irene," I held up a hand. "No, you don't get to argue." They all fell silent. I took a slow breath, making sure my voice was calm and steady. "If I'm paying off your debt, then this house belongs to me." My mother blinked. "What?" "You will formally sell it to me," I said. "For cheap, a fraction of what it's worth." Shock rippled through them. Daniel's face twisted with anger. "You're trying to steal my house." I tilted my head. "Your house? The one you couldn't even pay for?" He opened his mouth, but my dad spoke before he could. "Irene, that's not fair." I turned to him. "What's not fair is that I paid for this house and you gave it away like it was a toy." He pressed his lips together and I knew I had them backed into a corner. They had no other choice. The house was days away from being taken by the bank. They had no money, no options, no backup plan, and I was the only person who could save them. My mom's face palled. "You'd really do this?" I held her gaze, yes. A long silence. Then finally my dad exhaled, rubbing his forehead. "Fine," he muttered. "We'll sign the papers." He nodded, ignoring the way my heart pounded in my chest. I had won, but I wasn't finished yet. I had one last move left to make. And once everything was official, they were going to regret ever taking this house from me. I didn't let myself celebrate until every paper was signed, not until my name was officially on the deed, not until every legal document had been processed, notarized, and finalized. I didn't trust them. I couldn't. Because for years I had been the responsible one, the one who always helped, the one who figured things out, and they had used that against me. So we made sure there were no loopholes, no vague promises, no last-minute changes. And finally, 2 weeks later, the house was legally mine again. I sat across from them at the dining table, the same table where they had once told me I had to find another place, the same table where they had handed over everything I'd worked for to Daniel. I slid a folded letter across to him. Daniel frowned, picking it up. What's this? I leaned back in my chair. Your 1-month eviction notice. The room went silent. Then Daniel laughed, shaking his head. You're joking. I tilted my head. Do I look like I'm joking? He skimmed the letter, his smirk fading. You can't be serious. You said you'd help us, I smiled, and I did. I paid off your debt. I stopped the bank from taking the house. I bought the house, Daniel. It tapped the table. Which means you don't live here anymore. My mother gasped, reaching for the letter. Irene, sweetheart. You never what asked. My voice was calm. Intended form to have my house back. He swallowed. We just assumed that I'd let Daniel and Sophia stay forever. Rentrée? I let out a short, humorless laugh. No, absolutely not. Sophia, who had been quiet this entire time, finally spoke up. Her voice was sharp, panicked. Irene, where are we supposed to go? I raised an eyebrow. I don't know. Maybe your generous in-laws will take you in. I turned to my parents. Since you thought Danielle deserved the house more than me, I'm sure you won't mind opening your doors to him. My dad's face darkened. Irene, this is low. I met his gaze. No, you taking my house was low. This is just correcting a mistake. Daniel slammed the letter on the table. You can't do this. I stayed seated, calm as I looked up at him. I can, and I did. My mother's voice wavered. We're family, Irene. We don't do this to each other. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I leaned forward, pressing my hands against the table. Families don't do what you did to me. She flinched. I stood adjusting my bag over my shoulder. You have 4 weeks to move out, I said. I suggest you start packing now. And with that, I walked out. For the next month, they tried everything to change my mind. Daniel and Sophia alternated between begging and threatening me. Sophia called me crying, saying they had nowhere else to go. Daniel texted me angry messages about how I was ruining his life. My parents pleaded with me, telling me it wasn't fair to punish them all over a misunderstanding, but I didn't answer, not once. I had already done enough for them, and on the final day of their eviction notice, I drove back to check if they were gone. When I pulled up, the driveway was packed with moving boxes. Daniel and Sophia were arguing by their car, Sophia wiping away angry tears. And my parents, they were helping them load their stuff because they had no choice now. Daniel and Sophia were moving in with them. I rolled down my window, my voice light. All packed up. Daniel turned, face red with rage. You're a real piece of work, you know that? I smiled. And you're a terrible tenant. Guess we're both learning things today. My mother looked at me, eyes pleading. Irene, please don't do this. I looked at her, expression unreadable. You told me I'd find another place, remember? Shine hailed sharply. I put my car in park and got out, walking to the porch. The porch that was mine again. You made your choice, I said, crossing my arms. Now you get to live with it. Sophia muttered something under her breath, dragging her last suitcase to the car. Daniel stood there, glaring at me like he wanted to punch a hole in the wall, but there was nothing he could do. They were leaving and I was staying. I stepped inside my house, finally my house, and shut the door behind me.